Hello, dear students and non-students and all of my viewers. This is Classroom TZ, and I'm teacher Shadrach Swela. That is my number. So for today in our channel, we are going to have a different discussion, differ from the previous ones. Today we are going to start checking questions and the answer by topic-wise, from the first topic of Form 1 to the last topic of Form 4. In that way, first topic of Form 1 is referred as sources and importance of history. And actually, I tried to check the questions from Form 2 National Assessment, FTNA, in almost like 9 years, from 2015 exam to 2024 exam. And the first topic in the series of Form 1 is sources and importance of history. So in that way, today our discussion will be based on the only questions coming from sources and importance of history, and our reference are those at National Assessment Exam, commonly known as NECTA. We are going to check the questions and the answers, how they asked it, and how you're supposed to attempt for a student or even for others just to revise if you like history. So without further ado, let us start checking the first question, how they asked it. Before you forgot, make sure you follow and you subscribe my channel on YouTube. It's called the Classroom TZ. The first question it was, Bagamoyo, Kilwa, and Kondoa are example of. And that question, it was from National Examination of 2015, and it was question number 1, Roman 1. Bagamoyo, Kilwa, and Kondoa are example of. So if you were good or you are good in the first topic of Form 1, especially to those list of sources of history, then this Bagamoyo, Kilwa, and Kondoa they are dropping in certain kind of sources of history. So the answer, it was historical sites. This location are referred as historical sites. When we are trying to define what is historical site, we are saying these are places where historical events occurred or historical events took place. In that way, Bagamoyo, there is historical event occurred. Example, those issues of slave trade. Kilwa, also issue of slave trade. Kondoa it is famous for those drawing of late Stone Age. Those are inside of those caves on the stone. Those paints are indicating that humans existed there at Kondoa. In that way, after all those actions occurred or done by man in those places, then those places are qualified to be historical sites. And in Tanzania, there are so many historical sites than those three. Those three mentioned just the example of out of many lists. Let's check question number 2. The method of collecting information through talking and listening to elders is called, again, that was 2015, question number 1, Roman 2. When you want to collect information from elders, and those elders are just speaking to you, that method is called, so the answer is called the oral tradition. In that way, you should be able to define what is oral tradition. Oral tradition, you can take that part of question as sample of your definition. But normally we are defining oral tradition as a method of collecting information through words of mouth. You are just getting information by word of mouth. It's not like interview while you are collecting data in your research or questionnaire, but here you are just listening a story. And most of the time, this story provided by elders. Why elders refer the term history is all about the past event. So mostly we are expecting elders, they have big experience about the past events, so they have so many things to tell us. In short, they are our encyclopedia. Question number 3. People whose work is to study and explain the remains which show man's physical development, activities, and tools he made and used are known as. So this question, we need us to mention the name of those expertise in those activities. And the activities talking here is remains of past human activities, those remains. So those people who are studying about remains are called, these people are called the archaeologists. In that way, you should understand, if archaeologists are the people who study about the remains, then that field or discipline of study of about the remains is called what? That is called the archaeology. So in other time, they can ask you, those who are studying archaeology are called those are called the archaeologists. Also, the part of sources is important, sources of history. Which of the following include in the cultural practices through which the cultural practices through which historical information is obtained? This question needs us to list or to mention, to show out cultural practices include what kind of activities. Before that, you should be aware, this is coming from oral tradition. Refer types of oral tradition. We have two types of oral tradition. Number one is cultural practices. We are going to check here. Cultural practices include what and what. Also, out of that, we have narration of past events. Also, narration of past events is a part of oral tradition. Sorry. So in that way, we have cultural practices, yes, as I said, in narration of past event. So what is inside of cultural practices? The answer of this is telling us what is cultural practices: poems, proverbs, stories. What does it mean? Here I mean that in the meaning of oral tradition as the way of obtaining history through words of mouth, one way it can be through narration of past event by someone, or out of that we have these different activities: poem, proverbs, stories, actually are recreation activities. But these recreation activities or arts or literature activities can be used to express past event of human being. So when poem, proverbs, and stories expressing past events of human being, that is referred to cultural practices. The way of determining dates by remembering changes and events is commonly used in the first topic of history, sources and importance of history. There is one segment need you to understand how we can determine dates. And there are different ways to determine dates. Example that they mentioned there: remembering events or recording the events, studying the language, the use of scientific method, carbon-14 or potassium argon, or sometimes through arranging event in chronological order by using those tools like time chart, timeline, time graph, and the family tree. Those are examples for ways or method of determining dates. But today, they ask us to name the method of remembering event is commonly used where. They need us to apply which area people are determining dates by remembering the event. The answer is places where much of history is not written. Actually, if we don't have books or if we don't have any documents to refer, or the time when the event happening, those people, they don't have ideas how to write, then they are going to remember dates by understanding the actions or the events. Example, you may ask your grandpa or your grandma when actually he was in class 1 or he was in class 3. So you're expecting her or he to tell you direct the year, maybe 1975 or 1964. But because at that time there is very few ways, or actually there's no ways of writing down those informations, then your grandpa, your grandma can reply like, I was in class 3 when Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere visited at our school soon after independence. So she or he remember when she was class 3 by the event of the visitation of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere to his or her school. So in that way you can go and trace at what time Nyerere visited maybe the school called maybe Kilimanjaro. So you are going to get maybe Nyerere visited Kilimanjaro, that school maybe it was 1965. So you understand, my grandma or my grandpa, he or she was in class 3 in 1965. What directed you to get that date? It is the event of the visitation of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. That's the meaning of this method, remembering the events. So it used mainly in those areas where written documents were not present. A place where books, files, colonial, and travelers' records are kept is called, in which place these documents are kept. So the answer is archives. At the archive, that is where we are keeping this document. Make sure you're able to differentiate between archive and the library. Archive, we are keeping those past records. But in the library, we are keeping past and present records or documents. So the place where these books, file, and clone travelers and other chronicles are kept, that place is called the archive. Which of the following statement is not true about history? That was 2016, the first question. Which of the following statement is not true about the history? Among of the questions that you can say, thank you God, I got this one. So the answer it was, help learners to lose a sense of nationalism and patriotism. Actually, the question needs you to analyze or to understand the definition of history. If you know the definition of history, other alternatives that were given there were opposite of the definition of history. Example, this one helps learners to lose a sense of nationalism and patriotism. It is not true, because while we are learning history, we are promoting or we are developing the nationalism or nationhood and the patriotism by understanding the action taken by our elders, so it increases or it activates the sense of love to our country, and that is patriotism. So it was not true according to that answer. A history which is handed down through words of mouth, especially by elder, from one generation to another, known as what the name of that kind of history? That history is called the oral tradition. So you can find these are different ways also of asking the question about oral tradition. Previously, we got there, the elder narrating the story, and here they said again, elders handing down the stories. So once we are receiving information from elders about the past event, that is called the oral tradition. And here we have question number 9. Question number 9, it was matching item. And in matching items, we have list A and the list B. So let's check how it was look like. So that was a question. Actually, it was question number 2, 2016. Usually, according to the examination format, if you passed in my previous videos, I tried to explain the examination format of Form 2. Question number 1, it is multiple choice. Question number 2 usually is matching item. So this was question number 2 of 2016. And in this question, they include different topic, but mostly they touch the sources and the importance of waste. Very few informations or very few questions are out of this topic. So let's try to check. Roman 1. A period of 10 years. What does it mean? A period of 10 years. And then you're supposed to select the answer from list B. A period of 10 years, actually that is called the letter O, decade. Decade stands for the period of 10 years. So group of 10 years, that is decade. And it actually is coming from the concept of determining dates. The year of the Lord. What does it mean when you say the year of the Lord? Here the answer is letter G. Anno Domino. Anno Domino, that was the year of the Lord. Actually refer after the birth of Jesus Christ. That is it marked the end of before Christ, that inch of BC. The period when Dutch established their permanent settlement at the Cape. So actually say Roman 3. It is not part of the first topic, but let's try to answer because we are assuming now we are ending to Form 2 exam. So you are in Form 2, you know when Dutch settled at the Cape. So the year it is letter E, that is 17th century. And this is 17th century, that is when Dutch settled. Remember Dutch when they are in 1657, if not 1658, under the company of VOC Volk, under the leader of Jan van Riebeeck. They were there at the Cape. Question number Roman 4. The year in which Sultan Said he shifted his capital to Zanzibar. Also this it was not part of sources, but we may answer it. That was 19th century. So as long as I use the issue of centuries, we can still say it's part of the first topic. A century in which year that found year 2016. In which century? 2016 is the century 21st century. 21st century. Make sure you're able to to convert century to years and years to century. I'll give you one trick to convert years to century. If you want to convert years to century, you are taking the year you have given, take your year, example 2016, divide by 100. After dividing by 100, I'm sure the answer is coming 20 decimal something. Actually, it's going to give us decimals. So take the first number before the decimal, that the first number. After dividing, take the answer, then take the first numbers before decimal, and then cancel those decimals. The answer you get without decimal plus 1, and that's the essential of that year. Example, when divided this 2016, you're getting 20 decimal 16 or 0.16. So cancel that 16, take 20 plus 1, you get 21. That the century of 2016. The period of 100 years, everyone know this, please make sure and you know. Period of 100 years is a century. 100 years stands for century. A period in which Portuguese came in East Africa. Make sure you know the year and convert that year to a century. Then we go to F. No, that F is not the correct answer. The answer it is 15th century. 15th century, that the answer when the Portuguese came. Because Portuguese came here, it was in, they touched the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa in 1598, if I'm not mistaken. 1598, when you divide that 1598 over 100, we're getting 15 plus 1, that is 15th century. Average difference in age between children and their parents, that is generation. A period when a man made and used pebble chopping tools, that was early Stone Age. Pebble tools was early Stone Age. A period when Muhammad fled from Mecca to Medina, that was 622 AD. That is when Prophet Muhammad fled to Mecca. So please remind your answers in question Roman 7. there Roman 7, it should be letter C, not E. F should be letter C. Well, those are some human errors. So that was matching item. Let's check question number 10. An East African historical site where the skull of earliest man was discovered is known as, that is very, very famous question, where the skull of man discovered in East Africa. That place is called the Olduvai Gorge. Olduvai Gorge, and definitely is located in Arusha. So I will wonder if those kids were coming from northern part of Tanzania, Arusha, Manyara, Kilimanjaro, if you're not able to answer this question, because the historical site located nearby your places. It is Olduvai Gorge here in Arusha. The source of historical information which obtained through words of mouth is called, again they repeated this, through words of mouth is called what? I'm sure you got it. That is oral tradition. Through words of mouth is called oral tradition. History, the study of, that was question number Roman 1. You don't need to define, just check the alternatives, then you select the answer. History is the study of. The answer, it was past event. History is all about studying the past event. Question number 13. Which of the following is scientific method of determining dates of the past remains? One of the question previous, I mentioned you the four methods of determining dates, and also I told you about scientific method. And then scientific method, we have two scientific methods. Why we have two different names, and why we have two depend on the age of the remains. One is measured from this year to that year, and another one is measuring from that year to another year. That's why we have two those scientific method. So according to this question, the answer it was carbon 14. So maybe they were given a different alternative out of another one that is potassium argon, but the answer it was carbon 14. So from now on, you should understand we have carbon 14 and the potassium argon. Carbon 14 is measured below 150,000 years, and the potassium argon it measures above 150,000 years old. 10 years make, that was 2017. 10 years make decades. 10 years make a decade. Brief explain the meaning of the following terms. So also they asked you to define what is museum. What is museum? Museum, the correct answer it was, is the place where past objects are kept and shown to the public, or in the building or the place where past objects are kept in order to be shown to the public. Remember, in museum we are keeping only past objects, but these past objects can be objects like tools, and sometimes some of documents or piece of documents can be kept in in a museum. Briefly explain the meaning of the following term again. Carbon 14. This is different here. Question. That previous one where they asked about scientific method was the year 2017. Here it was 2018. So as I said, carbon 14 is a scientific method used to find the age of the past remains, but it stands for the year beyond 5,000 up to 150,000. In that way, if the object it is beyond 150,000 years, carbon 14 cannot test. Then we need another method, that is potassium argon, that can measure above 150,000 years old. In which country Songezi historical sites found? This is all about historical sites. If you remember the map, I'm sure while you was in Form 1, you drew this map, a very famous map showing those historical sites. I'm sure all of Form 1s they have the picture of this map. So Songezi is located in Uganda. Sometimes they would ask you, famous historical site in Uganda, also is the Songezi. Learning about the past by digging up and study the object found in the ground is known as learning about past by digging up and study the object found in the ground is known as. There, question number 1, I don't know, number 3 there, discussed about archaeologists. So archaeologists, they are doing this activity. Then this activity is called the archaeology actually. It's called the archaeology. Question number 19. Which among the following historical sites are found in Uganda? Remember that is 2019, not the same way. The answer it was Songezi and the Bigo. Songezi and Bigo are the famous historical sites found in Uganda. Why is it expensive to use archaeology? It was a multiple choice, you don't need to explain. It is expensive to use archaeology with different answers, but according to them, they said it needs experts and advanced technology. If I would say the archaeology is the process of digging down. So that the process, you need tools. Out of tools, you need experts. And then after getting the object, you need a very, very expensive mechanism to protect that object to maintain its naturality. Example, if you found the piece of dagger used by previous soldiers or ancient soldiers, we need to have a very good, expensive chemicals that can maintain that dagger or that knife to its naturality. That is where we're getting the expensiveness of archaeology. The experts themselves, they have to be paid. The tools are very expensive. Also, to maintain the shape or the originality of that object that found is also expensive. Brief explain the meaning of the following term. Generation. We define somewhere in matching items. The average difference in age between children and their parents. Please, if you ask the generation, don't finish by saying Gen Z, Gen C, I don't know, Gen Millennium. No. Please, there is a definition of generation according to our history. What is the importance of using oral tradition as a source of history? Give 6 points. That was question number 10. Actually, last question from 2. It is yes a question. So these kids of 2019, they were asked to write the importance of studying the source of history. That is called the oral tradition. And the oral tradition, you said, is all about narrating the past event through words of mouth. So to understand this topic very well, just imagine you have your grandma at night, and that is common in Africa. Before the revolution of technology, science and technology, or ICT, before the revolution of ICT, we were used to listen the stories from our grandma at night when there is a moon. Then we are rotating the sun, something like bonfire. Then we are starting listening the stories about Idi Amin, about Adolf Hitler, about those lions, different stories. That was oral tradition. So if you experienced that situation, what was the importance of that source? Here were the answers, but before writing these answers, make sure you have main body, introduction, main body, and the conclusion. In the main body, there you need to define what is oral tradition, adding some of information on the types of oral tradition, or example of oral tradition, and then you are going to main body. In the main body, you need to include the following answers. It preserves and reveals the historical information which we are not recorded, especially we are not recorded in a written form. So all those stories or events that we are not recorded in a written form, we can have it by oral tradition, or even maybe they are never filmed to video, we can have it in oral tradition by listening the stories. It is useful to both literate and illiterate. Those who are educated and not educated, as long as you're able to listen, you can use oral tradition. It's useful to you. Easiest and cheapest source of history. It's easiest and cheap because we don't need to pay money in order to listen to stories. But currently, because of this development of science and technology and people finding way of making money, maybe somewhere you need to pay someone to tell you a story. But previously, it was our culture to flow for free, telling the kids about the past event. And sometimes we use this oral tradition as a moral lesson, teaching the kids good things and the bad things. That's why it was free, part of the class. So it referred as easiest and cheapest, comparing other sources of history, like museums, you need to pay a entrance fee, historical sites, you need to travel very far to the interior, and the other sources of history. It is live source. Why it is live source? It involves physical interaction. You see the storyteller, you can ask the question. If the storyteller was among of the, or was a character in that event, he or she can give you the real picture, what happened. That way we are saying it live source. Comparing to written document, when you are reading a book, it's not a live source, just reading there about Mabala the farmer. Then you, if you have the question, it's not easy to ask the question there on time when to be answered. But in oral tradition, you can ask the question and you can get the answer. So it involves physical interaction. Give warning and education, as I said earlier. Oral tradition also, it was like a mechanism of shaping human behavior or society behavior by narrating different stories that can shape the behavior of the members of the community. It is entertaining. It creates recreation. Some of the stories make us happy. Some of the stories make us to laugh. So it is entertaining. So those were the points why we need the oral tradition. So after that, you are going to flow your conclusion. You are good to go out of the room as you finish the exam. But before you finish that, make sure you recheck again your exam, you prove your exam, then you go out. Question number 23. That was question number 6, Roman 2 in 2020, exam of 2020. A building in which objects of artistic, cultural, historical, or scientific interest are kept and shown to the public is called and shown to the public. And those objects are objects of the past. Actually, it's called a museum. A duration of 100 years is called, I'm sure even class 4 can answer now by using this new curriculum. Duration of 100 years is a century. Then question number 25, according to the list of my questions, it is explain 6 limitations of using oral tradition as a source of historical information. Previous question, they asked us about importance. Now they need us to discuss about the weaknesses. It asked in 2020 and also 2021, but a different number of questions. So actually we need to answer like this. The weakness of our tradition are these ones. Number 1, firstly, it needs much attention and the power of memory. My friend, if you have a short memory or small memory like beans or cereal, you cannot enjoy this oral tradition. Make sure you have active memory and the powerful memory of storing this information or those information in order to tell the coming generation. So those short memory like grasshoppers, they cannot enjoy this oral tradition. False information can be given by storyteller. We are not sure if all those information spoken by storytellers are correct. Sometimes they can exaggerate, or sometimes they can cut off some of part of the story because of their personal interest. So there are those weaknesses. Not all informations are true. It's time consuming. Oral tradition need you a time to sit down and listen. The time you are doing oral tradition or you are listening oral tradition, you don't do any other activity because it needs you to be attention, listen and get the point. So in that way, other activities should wait So we are consuming time of sitting and doing one activity, just listening. It is wastage of time. Narration of historical events are centered to those people of status. So in the previous, this issue of oral tradition, it was commonly on to those people with status in the community. Example, kings, queens, chiefs, and sons of that royal families. So it was selective. In other language, you can say it was selective because those people were coming from normal families or poor families. They never got the chance to listen to those stories at those times in the past. So it was selective according to the status of the member of the community. Language barrier, here it is about when the storyteller is using different language in the audience, they know about different language. I'm from Kilimanjaro, then I know Chaka, and my audience, they are coming from Kigoma. They know nothing about Chaka. So how can we communicate? Then there is a language problem. Or commonly, we got the visitors from maybe England. They know very good English. They are fluent in English. But they are going to find a tour guide there, interior from Masai. He or she know nothing about English. How that man can tell them the story. So there is language barrier. It depends on the life of storyteller, so does not stay long. Mean that when the storyteller die, end of the story or end of the movie. Just like the one who owned the story, the steering of our movie. So when he passed away or she passed away, it's the end of everything we got. So it's not a long pattern of sources of history, depending on the lifespan of the storyteller. By saying so, you are going to the conclusion, then you are good to go. Number 26, briefly explain the meaning of the following terms. Archive. Archive define their previous in some of exam. These are places where a collection of public and private documents and all the records are preserved. These documents include the personal letters, early travelers and missionary records, traders, writings, personal and government files, political parties documents, and so on. As long as it is document, and that document is all about the past, then it can be kept in the archive. So either it's public, owned by government, or it is private, owned by someone. Example, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere biography, we can find the museum, in the archive. That is a personal or private document. If we are looking about the first constitution of 1977, the first draft, we are going there, the archive, we can find it, that is public document. That is all about the archive. We are keeping public and private document of the past. The archaeologists study past human activities through material remains. What do anthropologists study? Very good question. From the beginning, we are speaking about archaeology. But here we got anthropologists. Anthropologists study what? Anthropologists study the cultural practices and the patterns of human society. So if you're learning about the lifestyle, life structure of certain community, that is all about anthropology, and you are anthropologist. That was 2022, question number Roman 1. Differentiate the following: history and the oral tradition. History and the oral tradition. Here we go. History is the record of human past events, while the oral tradition, a source of historical information, which is obtained through words of mouth. So history is all about past activities. If we want to get all those past events, we are using oral tradition. It's a matter of definition. How best can history be defined? That was 2022. That was multiple choices. The study of past human, social, economic, and political events. I'm sure all of us will understand this, my dear viewers. Then we have this matching item of 2023. List A, list B. When you check there, list B is all about determining dates, and some sources of history. A drawing along which dates and events are shown in the order that they followed in history. A drawing along which dates and events are shown in the order. That was timeline. Audiovisual source which capture information using sound and picture, like what we are doing now, sounds and picture. That is called the film. That is audiovisual film. Sometimes referred as a modern way of having historical event or recording a historical event. That is a modern way, audiovisual. A drawing which shows the relationship between a blood-related member over a period of time. Family tree, that is the meaning of family tree. And the good thing is we are getting family trees in English subject and also here in history. A table, just a table which shows historical dates and events. As long as I said a table, that is time chart. A drawing that is shown how dates and events are related, that is time graph. Make sure you're able to differentiate these things. Time chart, timeline, time graph. All of them, they have columns, except maybe timeline. Timeline does not have columns in those boxes or what. But time chart and time graph, they are somehow related. So make sure you're able to differentiate. When you see a table, that is actual time chart. But when you say, like there question number 5, a drawing that show how dates and events are related, that is time graph. Question number 31. Describe 5 weaknesses of archives in obtaining historical information. Archives, where we are putting those past documents. 1, most found in town. That's the problem. Most of archives are located in town, mean that those people who are coming from rural areas, they don't have access of archive. Then it is selective, or there is a bias. And actually, we cannot build archives in the village. Easy to be distracted by different agents of destruction like water, fire, and insects, especially when we do have modern buildings or we don't have good scientific or technological methods of keeping this. It can be destroyed by those agents. Water, fire, and insects are easily to destroy. Remember, these are papers, and papers are very weak in those agents. Underwater, fire, or insect, very easy to be distracted. So that is the weakness. It keeps only document material, so it is selective again. Only document material. So if maybe you are not able to read, you cannot use this, or you cannot go to archives. Or if you're looking for the object, like something like the first shield used by maybe Zwangendaba. If you're looking for that, and in your area you are surrounded by archives, you cannot get that shield. It is set up only for literate people. Only educated people, they can use archives. Those who are friends from there and there, if they're not able to interpret those symbols or letters, they cannot understand the archives, or they cannot enjoy the presence of archives. It is expensive, mostly in the protection of the document. So as I said, Roman 2, in order to avoid Roman 2, we need to have the challenge of Roman 5. Roman 2, we need to protect our material away from those agents of destruction. How can we put those materials out of agents of destructions? Is when we incur cost. And when we incur cost, that is expensiveness of the method. So these were the answers on the weaknesses of archives. And then we have a certain farmer in central Tanzania discovered a skeleton similar that of the extinct dinosaur, assumed it to have died in 9,000 years ago. 9,000 years ago. Which method will you use to determine its age? Then, because it's all about age, and that is discovered maybe by the method called the archaeology. So we can term that farmer, yes, he was a farmer, but without knowing, he became archaeologist because he discovered it under the ground. Then after discovering it, we understood it's aged 90,000 years ago. And the question is, what method used to determine that? Actually, dialect here is all about scientific method. And the answers clicking to our heads are carbon 14 or potassium argon. So to get it clear, you should understand the range of the years. From where to where carbon 14 measure, and from where to where potassium argon measure. So after that discussion, the answer is carbon 14. Remember, carbon 14, it ends before the beyond of 150. So 90,000, it is within from 0 to 150,000. But if the bone of that object or that animal, it can be 200,000. Carbon 14 cannot test it. Then we need to use the potassium argon. That was 2024-1. We don't like history because it deals with the past events which do not have any value. Remark the sum from one student. Which conclusion can you draw about the students? They are not aware of the importance of history. Those kids who are hating history, they are hating it because they don't know the value of history. Let all of us, all human sphere of life covered by history, no matter it's economic, political, social, or all of discipline that we are studying at school covered by history. That's why we have the history of mathematics, where mathematics come from. The history of biology, where biology comes from. The history of those physics, where physics started. While you are studying the biography of somebody called Isaac Newton, by using that famous event of apples dropping down, then why apple does not go up. That concept, when you are reading it, is a past event, so it's automatically a history, although it is history in the physics. So if you don't know this importance, you can start hating the subject, because most of us, we need to say, how can we apply in our life? How can we apply in our life? If we don't have the history, we are died nation. We cannot know where we are going. We should know the history, then the history give us the light to know where we are going in the future. So by saying that, my friends, that is all about the first topic. We discussed the number of questions, and all from those exams, from Form 1 and Form 2, but only one topic is sources and the importance of history. I'm sure this is helpful to you, and it can help you be prepared for the exams. By saying that, I'm again Mr. Shadrach Swila. That is my number. You can check me on it anytime. I can respond, but also there down I attached the title or the address of my YouTube channel. You can subscribe there and put the notification. I'm trying to post as much as can to make sure you be aware with the history. Thank you for listening. Ciao.